Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Z, and welcome to another episode of Next Up Narcissism. Today's episode, I am honored to have as my guest, Rebecca Zung. Rebecca Zung is a top-ranked trial lawyer and high-conflict negotiator and international best-selling author. She has been recognized by the U.S. News as one of the best lawyers in America, that is the top 1%. With a career spanning over 24 years, Rebecca's credibility is well established. Her rise going from a college dropout and single mother to one of the nation's most powerful attorneys representing high-profile clients, billionaires, celebrities, and more, all illustrate her resilience and dedication. Personally, I cannot say enough about Rebecca Zung. She is a wealth of information. She is brilliant. And she is just someone that you want on your side. Her books, including the recent USA Today and Amazon #1 bestseller, S.L.A.Y the Bully, How to Negotiate with a Narcissist and Win, further cement her authority in this field. And we will talk in detail about Rebecca's S.L.A.Y method and all her other kind of tips, tricks, and strategies of how to navigate these high conflict personalities, particularly within the court system. She has been featured in major media such as Forbes, Time, Extra, Huffington Post, NPR, and many more top podcasts. So again, I am absolutely honored and thrilled to have Rebecca as a guest. This episode is going to give you a ton of amazing information, really good kind of nuggets of information, especially for those who are currently or intend to go through the court system in navigating the dynamics with somebody who has a high conflict personality or has narcissistic personality disorder. Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Z, and welcome to another episode of Next Up Narcissism. Today, we have Rebecca Zung, who is one of my favorites, who is just a boss. And we're just going to get right into it. Rebecca, you work with people who are dealing with what you call high conflict personalities all the time. So before we even get into everything, can you just give us an overview of what is a high conflict personality? What does it look like? Where do we see it? And what do we do with it when we know it's there?
Yeah, this is a person who just thrives on people being in drama, trauma, and chaos. That's what they want. They want that toxic stew. I knew somebody who would be like getting people upset, like just even at a dinner party, like they would get somebody who is almost on the verge of tears, and then they would go, well, now we're having a conversation. And like that is a high conflict personality. They actually thrive and enjoy being in this drama, trauma, and chaos, getting people stirred up. It's like actually they get off on that. And so this is not a reasonable person who just enjoys having conversation with people, who wants to communicate, where there's a give and take, where people feel seen, where people feel heard, where people feel respected, where there's an atmosphere of openness and there's a back and forth that is not happening where you're dealing with a high conflict personality.
So would you say that there's a difference for the people listening who I'm sure are going to have this question? How is this different from somebody who's just stubborn?
Well, I mean, a person who's stubborn might be, okay, I'm entrenched in a particular view or something like that. But a person who might be stubborn might still be, oh, I'm still going to be maybe listening to your views in certain ways. Or they might be stubborn on a certain issue or a certain area. But a high conflict personality literally is thriving constantly on always stirring the pot in every area that they possibly can all the time, no matter where they go. It's almost like Pigpen in Charlie Brown had that like cloud around them
Yes.
all the time. That's
Yes.
how it is with a high conflict personality. Wherever they go, there's like something brewing with
That's a
them.
great analogy. That's a great analogy. And because, people are going to say, well, maybe I have a boss and she's really difficult at work, but at home, she's totally different behind closed doors. She's sweet. She's this. And so what Rebecca's talking about is it's not just somebody who is difficult at particular times. This is somebody whose personality construct is one of someone who thrives off of that environment. And I always say this, that we always want to look at the function of someone's behavior. So if the function of someone's behavior is to prove their point, to get a point across because they truly believe it, that's one thing. Maybe that's someone who's stubborn. Maybe that's somebody who has really kind of rigid views about things. But with high conflict personalities, the function of their behavior is to get at you, get under your skin. It doesn't matter if you're talking about coffee. It doesn't matter if you're talking about cell phones. It doesn't matter. The topic is irrelevant. It's that need to just get under your skin because, like you said, they just get off on that.
They just thrive on creating drama, trauma, and chaos wherever they go. It's just they enjoy that. And I remember my friend told me this story one time about she had her mother-in-law, when her daughter, who's grown now, she had a daughter who was like 7 or something, who's her mother-in-law had taken her daughter's doll, and her daughter was like frantically looking for it, and the mother-in-law was behind the tree laughing while she was watching the daughter frantically looking for the doll, and she was laughing watching her, and she found her doing this and was like, oh my god, what? She was like horrified to see this scene, and she's like, what are you doing? But that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
They just kind of they do this because they enjoy, kind of, it's entertainment. It's sort of theater.
They're in charge in their mind of the other people's emotional chaos, of their thought process. It's that control, that manipulation
Exactly.
of getting inside their head. So that leads me then to my next question is, clearly all people with narcissistic personality disorder also will by nature be high conflict personalities, right? In one way or another, whether it's direct, whether it's passive, whether it's playing victim,
Covert,
whatever.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But are all people who have high conflict personalities narcissists?
No. There is definitely some overlap, but they actually say about 10% of the population is high conflict. And there is some variance in what I've heard about narcissistic personality disorder. From what I understand, it's like, according to resources, they say it's like 6.9% is what I've heard, but they also say up to 15% of the population has a personality disorder that lacks empathy. So if you lump in things like antisocial personality disorder, bipolar personality disorder, and all of these other disorders that lack empathy, it could be up to 15% of the population. Now, so if you say 10% of the population has a high conflict, there's definitely some overlap there. So now, it could be up to 20% of the population has some sort of personality issue that has some kind of high conflict involved with it. Honestly, I think it's probably more.
I would
Because
agree with you.
if you look at the spectrum and the
Yeah.
scope of it, I mean, we're talking about the people who are all the way at the end of the spectrum here, who are actually end up, in the DSM-5,
Yes. Yeah.
which is like at the end of the spectrum.
Yes.
here, right?
Yes.
I mean, so I think that's pretty extreme.
I mean, I agree with you because I have always said that I think it is a very misleading number, because I'll hear people say, why are you so focused on this? Only, whatever, such a small percentage. It is, but not really, because if you think about it, people with high conflict personalities, narcissistic personalities, or even just extreme narcissistic traits, they're not going to therapy and getting
No,
diagnosed.
of
And
course,
if they do,
at
right,
least
it's
not
either
aware of everybody.
no, it's either court mandated or they go once, they don't come back again. They go to a million different therapists until they find one that's going to buy into their bullshit. And that's what happens. So there's really no accurate number on that. And I would agree with you. And I think also now that we have so much more knowledge about it and it's much more out there, and with social media, certain people don't get away with certain things anymore and people have more knowledge about it. So we're hearing about it more. Yeah. Are people misdiagnosed by, society? Yeah, they are. We know that people, my ex-boyfriend will say is a narcissist when really it wasn't a narcissist. He just didn't want to be with me. People say, I hear this all the time. No, he's not a narcissist. He just didn't want to be with you. Is he the greatest guy? Maybe not. But, narcissism is a very distinct thing. So, and I completely agree with you on that. I think it's a very low number. And I absolutely agree with you that it's definitely more than that. So with that in mind, because there are many people out there who have high conflict personalities, and I see this in my work a lot when I'm working with people who are in narcissistic abusive relationships, whether it's a significant other, a colleague, a friend, or, a family member. And I have them work on boundaries. And I have them set boundaries that will work well within that narcissistic cycle and those narcissistic patterns and dynamics, right? Which sometimes is very different than what boundary setting would look like in a non-narcissistic abusive relationship. But for these particular boundaries, one of the things that I get all the time is they'll come in and they'll say, okay, I did X, Y, and Z, but it didn't work. And I'll say, okay, well, why didn't it work? Well, because my mother still did this, this, and this, or my husband still did this, this, and this. It didn't work. And I tell them all the time, right, that the boundary has nothing to do with them. The boundary has everything to do with you and you being able to walk away from this situation feeling not necessarily at ease, but feeling a little bit more in control than you normally would have. So I have a couple questions about that. Why is it that people with high conflict personalities in that kind of realm of narcissism, why is it so hard for other people to grasp that they just can't get it? Like, why is it so hard for other people to just be able to look at it and say, all right, they're never going to change. This is who they are. Why do we keep trying?
You keep trying to with that same person again.
Yeah, just why do we keep trying and thinking it's a failure on our part?
I mean, I think it's a number of different things. I mean, I think it's the type of person that they choose, for one thing. I mean, I just had a whole conversation with Nadine Macaluso about this, who wrote the book Run Like Hell, which, I mean, it was a really great conversation. I mean, she was saying that the type of people that they choose are the type of people who are the people who don't give up, who are, super loving, who are super supportive, who are the type of people who are going to be, the ones who are, the giving, supportive ones, right? So I think it's partially that. I think it's partially that dopamine cortisol mix of where you get addicted to that person because you're addicted to that dopamine hit. I mean, I think it's that physiological need that you're like desperate to get back to that love bombing, whatever in your mind you think you're going to have. I mean, you're addicted to that hope. You're addicted to the hope of what you think
yes
the person is going to be. And you live on hope with them all the time. It's never actual. You never materialize anything with them. I mean, if you really look at what they're actually doing. I mean, I just did a video on, one word says it all. Like, and that is, it's the integrity of it. Are they doing what they say they're going to do with their words, their actions, their body language, everything? And it's the integrity of it. And they don't. It's always the promises. It's
I love that.
always the promises.
I love that. Because I tell people all the time, majority of people were good people, right? The majority of people are good people, and we assume that people are going to be good in response. And so when we get hit with things like this, it's very jarring, right? Because until you really interact with it'll never really make sense to you unless you deal with this directly, because it's jarring and it makes you have to look at people differently. And I think it's very difficult for people to kind of then have to, it's kind of, we always say this, especially once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's kind of, it's kind of like that. Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
You just want to believe that the person is a good person. You just want to believe it. And it stops you from seeing what's actually happening.
Yes. And I think a lot of people feel badly looking at somebody like that, as if they're doing something wrong, but they're not, and for people listening that have a really hard time accepting or wanted to accept the people around them, maybe you're thinking of someone in particular that you feel like you're being a bad person, or you feel like you're doing something wrong or overreacting or misinterpreting somebody else's actions, but you're listening to this going, yeah, that's exactly what my dad's like, or that's exactly like what my girlfriend's like. It doesn't make you a bad person to look at somebody in an accurate light.
Yeah. Or it doesn't make you a failure in a way to say, maybe this isn't going to work out. And maybe you have to at some point walk away, and you don't have to feel guilty for putting boundaries into place, by the way. And one of the reframes that I many times try to help people with is that those boundaries are boundaries that they created. It's not your creation, because, by the way, you wouldn't have had to put them there had it not been for their behavior.
Love that. Yes, correct. I love that. They've made it necessary.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then see those boundaries as bridges to your new life.
And for people that are people pleasers, for people that always want to do the right thing or don't want people to get angry at them, I think setting boundaries is something that's notoriously difficult, right? But interestingly, with people who are narcissists, when you set boundaries with them, we think they're going to get angry, and they probably will. But the truth is, if you look at it, they don't really go anywhere.
Well, they're always the worst right before they're ready to give up. I mean, and I always say they're going to be like a 2-year-old having a tantrum. And so, they're going to be like, I'm just going to have to scream louder. I'm just going to have to scream longer. And so, eventually they will give up. And you're just going to have to get through that period of when they're going to have their major tantrum, but you can be prepared for it. So, and that's what I teach people how to do in my S.L.A.Y program. You can have responses ready. You can have your documentation ready. You can have everything prepared ahead of time. The thing is, they're super difficult people, but they're really simple to understand.
Isn't that very predictable? I say this all the time, that for the level of difficulty that they are, they're simultaneously the most predictable people. In their effort to be so unique and so crafty, they are the most predictable. It's more predictable than someone with anxiety or depression. I mean, that's how bizarre this is that it doesn't matter who you are. It's the same crap every single time, which makes, and I want to get into your S.L.A.Y method, but it makes, even though they seem impossible for those listening, I promise you that once you begin to get a handle on this and you see what I like to call the blueprint or the playbook of their behaviors, the level of empowerment that comes over you once you figure this out, it's a game changer. It's an absolute game changer, which leads exactly into what I want Rebecca to talk about, is her S.L.A.Y method. And her S.L.A.Y method is what she uses to work with people dealing with these high conflict personalities. So would you just kind of just tell us what the S.L.A.Y method is, how it came to be, who you use it with, what it looks like, and all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So my S.L.A.Y method is the blueprint. I call it a blueprint as well. I call it it's a roadmap basically to get exactly where you want to go to win your negotiations, to win in court, to win in communication, whatever it is that you want to do. It's a 4-step playbook to help you visualize where you want to go and then just create the plan. So S is strategy, and that is where you create your vision. Where do you want to go? And I help people create, I like to do like short term, midterm, long term. So short term is like helping you today, this week, next week, like step 1, don't run. Step 2, make a U-turn. Step 3, break free, so that you have like immediate, like little short-term baby steps. Because a lot of times when you're dealing with a narcissist, like just even seeing like what's right in front of your face is like so hard to even like breathe.
And
And so
also you get a sense of self-efficacy, right? Like if you tackle this one tiny thing, it seems a little bit more manageable. And then you slowly get that confidence of, okay, I did this part. I can do the next one now, rather than trying to tackle this like huge mountain.
exactly. So first, little ones, and then midterm would be like, okay, how am I going to get through this mediation, or how am I going to get to court, or how am I going to get through like that? So that's what I call kind of midterm. And then long term is where do I want to see my life in a year? Where do I want to see my life? Where do I actually want to be in my life? Do I want a house on the beach with a really cute boyfriend, or do I want to like, where do I actually want to have my life be? Because so many people have been in such survival mode for
They
so
don't even
long,
know.
they don't even know what they want
Correct.
for their lives. And so like I try to get people to actually visualize what they actually want for their lives, right? So S is strategy, L is leverage, which is how to create the real leverage. And that's all about narcissistic supply. And obviously supply is what drives them. I call it their food, their lifeblood, their oxygen. I tier their supply into diamond level and coal level, because that's how you can build leverage. Diamond level is image, reputation, how they look to the world. And because you have to create leverage that's going to um, threaten a source of supply that's more important for them to keep than the supply that they get from manipulating you. So the coal level supply is what I call coal level supply. That's manipulation, and so that can be passive aggression, that can be flying monkeys, that can be, it's all that what I call the dark underbelly of narcissistic supply. But that's why they move goalposts in negotiations and that sort of thing. Most people think that they just want to win, but
No.
that's just the image piece of it. They want to, they get off on jerking you around, right?
Can I actually, I'm gonna intervene on L of S.L.A.Y for a second, because I really want people to hear that when you are, and I'm going to use the example of court, when you are going through a divorce with somebody who has narcissistic personality disorder, their goal is not to win. Their goal is to drag you through hell, to have you spend your money, be dependent on them to sign papers, get back to your attorney, all of the things involved in court, and just to routinely, because you left, right? So that's done. But they use your children, they use the court, they use the money. And so if you can just talk a little bit about that, as far as like what, I have a lot of people who listen who are, either in the process of getting divorced or about to get divorced, and they are petrified because of this. So what are like just some quick things that you tell people who are going through this?
Well, I mean, for one thing, I have a 5-page packet in my S.L.A.Y program that's called the Make My Lawyer My Ally packet. And it's actually like hand your lawyer this. It's actually part of my triple threat whole lawyer piece. So I have a module on how to get the best lawyer. And then I have a questions for vetting an attorney. And then I have the 5-page Make My Lawyer My Ally packet.
I'll include all her info for people listening so you can find all this.
Yeah. So because it's all about, like, first of all, like, don't have your lawyer be sending letters of proposal back and forth, because that's just a whole big freaking waste of money. And it's like, if they're late in sending discovery back and forth, you need to file a motion to compel immediately. Like, it's like, because they play these games, for like, they'll send over, if they're supposed to send over 12 months of bank statements, they'll send over all the months except July. Or they'll send over all the
true.
everything except for 3 pages
Yes.
of each month or something. They just play these games. So I'll tell them in the program, like, if you want bank statements, just go to subpoena them from the bank. It is way cheaper for you, like things like that, because they're just going to play these little games. They're going to ignore court orders. They're going to light you up with litigation. They're going to use your children as pawns. They're going to, whatever they can do. They're going to lie about you in pleadings. They're, all these things. But if you can get ahead of it, if you know what you're dealing with ahead of time, it will help you so tremendously. And if you know the type of narcissist you're dealing with, it also is more helpful. Because, like, for example, covert narcissists are going to be more likely to be more passive aggressive. They're more, I call them the pearl grabbers. They're like the
me?
What? I would never.
I'll give you full credit, but I'm gonna use that one. That's good.
I would never, like, because, like, they are the ones that would be like, they smear in terms of care. So here's a good example of a covert narcissist. I am so worried about Susie and her drinking. Oh my gosh, I'm so concerned about her with the children. I mean, I think she's just really anxious lately, so she's just drinking a lot more. Just worried about her, just worried. That's all. And then, like, 6 months later, Susie's an alcoholic. And, like, oh, now Susie, you have to testify against Susie in court. But Susie probably is a teetotaler, right? But or maybe they just saw Susie at a bar one time or something, but now Susie's an alcoholic. But they smear in terms of care. I'm just worried about her. Like, but that's the covert narcissist. They like, the inadvertent email chain that they left somebody off of. I could have sworn I put you on that email. I don't know how I left you off of that. It's all like that plausible deniability. I call it, like, the clean hands.
Yes,
like,
because to someone who doesn't know their stuff, and as the person who, let's say, going through divorce, the non-abusive person is going to say, see, this is what I'm talking about. And anyone's going to say, well, you really think they did that on purpose? So it's hard to explain it to people because these isolated events seem so benign in nature. But when you take them, the culmination over years and the function of them, they didn't do it because they forgot, they did it because the function of it is to make you insanely crazy and drag this out. That's the function. How they did it is almost irrelevant.
They seem so nice. Oh, I'm sure that must have been inadvertent. They seem so nice. They're such a good person. Oh, they volunteer at the hospital, and like they seem like such a great. They're wonderful. She's a great mom. Like all the things, right? And so, like that's why the coverts are the most dangerous,
Yes,
I think.
I agree with that.
And so the grandiose are going to be more likely to be impulsive. They're going to be the ones who are going to definitely ignore the court orders. They're going to be the ones that are going to be filing false pleadings, lying about you in letters and whatever. I mean, they're going to be right. The malignant narcissists are going to be the ones that are going to be your stalkers. They're going to be the ones that are going to be. They'll call you a child molester, even if you never touched a kid, and they're going to be the ones. They'll take your job if they don't care. I mean, so if you know the type of narcissist that you're dealing with, it's really helpful to get ahead of it. And that's actually part of my A in S.L.A.Y, which is anticipate the type of narcissist and stay 2 steps ahead of them. And they're going to try to bait you. They're going to try to trigger you. That they're going to try to get as much supply from you as possible. So the best thing that you can do is actually have what I call your NARC toolkit. So like everything is in writing. Use a kind of writing that is has a date and like a timestamp, so that you can always have like a way that you're tracking it, and keep documentation all the time, because every time that they're late or they lie or they do something, they don't do, show up with the kids late or whatever, I always just say the reframe, which is thank you for the gift. Thank you for the gift.
I love that. I love that. Just keep it
Because
coming. Keep it coming.
keep it coming, because now you can keep summaries of oh, you asked for a change in the schedule again. Thank you for the gift. Because now you're going to have a summary of all the times that you lied, all the times you asked for a change in the schedule. Because now I'm going to start to expose you for who you are. You're ethically manipulating the manipulator.
So what's your, I get this a lot. So from a legal standpoint, what would you tell people who, so they have, they have the documents, they have this, but for things that aren't in writing, right? Like they drop the kids off late, or they said something in person or something that was really just horrible or relevant to the custody case or relevant to, alimony, whatever it is. How do you tell people to use the stuff that's not in writing, and should they use it, and how do they use it?
Well, I would just keep a journal contemporaneous with when it happened, because you can keep your own journal and say, this happened and it was my recollection of that this happened at that time, and we had this conversation, and this is the conversation that was had, and it may be hearsay during the trial, but if you end up having a custody evaluation and you have to tell the custody evaluator, or you have to talk about it in mediation, or there are many different times that some of these conversations still might be relevant. And you can always testify to your part of the conversation, by the way. And so I would still keep a journal of it. And by the way, there may be witnesses who can testify to certain things and to the impressions of the conversation. Well, they might not be able to say what the person said exactly, but my impression of the conversation was that it was heated or something like that, So there's always ways that you can certainly get things into evidence.
No, that's extremely helpful, because I get that a lot, that almost if it's not in writing, then it didn't happen and that there's nothing they can do to, do about it. So when it comes to the actual custody cases, in your experience, or even just the divorce proceedings, Do you find that people with high conflict personalities ever resolve the issues in mediation?
Oh, they always do. That's what the whole S.L.A.Y method is about. I mean, because they will protect their diamond level supply if it is threatened. So what you do is by the time you get to mediation, you have lots and lots of I give them option A versus option B. So option A is that you're threatening a source of supply that is more important for them to keep than the supply that they get, you know. So let's say like a really good way for people to presence this is I had a case one time where the husband had been a C-level executive of a Fortune 20 company, a huge company, and he had all of the power in the marriage, and he thought he had all the power going into the divorce as well. But then it turned out that the wife ended up getting a really bad STD that she uncovered when she went to the gynecologist, one that she was going to end up having for the rest of her life. And so we ended up putting together an amended pleading and asked for a jury trial. We didn't file the amended pleading, though. So in Florida, where I had practiced, you can ask for a jury trial for because you can do a civil claim for assault and battery for STD, and then ask for a jury trial. And so we were going to have we were going to actually have a jury for these tort claims, and this guy was going to have to be in front of all these people, and he had the reason why he had gotten these STDs is because he had been with all kinds of women that he had paid, and we had found out about his proclivity for his hobbies, let's just say, and it was going to come out. And so instead of actually doing that, though, what we did is in mediation we put together this package of things that we were going to file, but didn't file, and said, hey, listen, here's option A. Option A is here's all the things that we want. And option B is we're going to file this stuff. We're going to file this amended claim, and we're going to, depose all of these people. And you're going to be your life. But option A could be really, really great for you.
Yeah. And I mean, and here's why it is so important to find an attorney, to find people in your corner that understands the nuances and the complexities of the manipulation that a narcissist is going to use when you're going through court with them. Because what Rebecca was just talking about, those options were carefully constructed to be able to get exactly what she needs. So here's the example I give. This was always an excellent example that I love. So somebody that I worked with, they wanted, it was their day to have the kids, but the kids had a soccer game. And in order to, she really wanted the ex to be there because the kids would be upset if he wasn't. And it was like a championship soccer game, whatever. And normally, they would never show up. If she asked, can you come to the game? The automatic response is going to be, no, I'm busy, or they're going to pretend to forget about it. But what she did was she phrased it in such a way, again, all in writing. I don't remember the exact words, but it was something along the lines of, the dads being there when their kids win the championship, and then they take this dad championship picture. And it was like, oh, well, that's different, right? Because now he looks like dad of the year. He can't not be there. So he didn't go for his kid, right? He went, the kid doesn't know the difference, right? But it's that level of manipulation, constant, that you really need to understand. And so when you take it and put it in the course, it's not just you. Now you have your attorney, right? You have the judge. There's so many other people involved that need to be educated on this, which is something that, we're all trying to eventually hopefully do. But, this is exactly, without that understanding, you could never do something like that.
Right. But that's what I teach in the S.L.A.Y program is like, you can't just go like, oh, let's all just come to the table, like kumbaya, la, 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 or do some kind of like early, collaboration, whatever. No, it can't be that because, you're not dealing with rational or reasonable over here. You're dealing with somebody who has damage to the limbic system from childhood trauma, and so they're getting off on this, and so you got to take your personalization out of this. You've got to be tactical. You've got to be strategic about this, and think about how. I always say, because people say, I don't want to fight. I just
or they don't want to anger them.
Right. Mm-hmm. But if you want something that's fair, if you want something that's just, if you don't want to fight, then this is what you have to do. This is what you have to do. And so many times people figure this out too far down the road because people think, well, they said that they're going to be reasonable. They said that they're going to be okay. And I'm always like, okay, well, if they were a narcissist during the marriage, they're not going to be better after.
Correct.
I mean,
correct.
They're going to be worse. So don't believe them. I mean, you're going to figure this out halfway down the road, and they're going to be way ahead of you.
That's right.
Way ahead of you.
That's right.
And so you've got to get your leverage ready. And so I really call it ethically manipulating the manipulator, because you're just using their behavior. You're using what you've got, and then you've got you're using what you need to use in order to create a motivation and an incentive for them to want to come to a place that ends up being the fair settlement.
Right. However it's coded. However it's coded, as long as you get them. I love that. And it's so tricky, and it's so difficult to explain this to attorneys that don't understand that. I cut you off before we got to why of your S.L.A.Y program, and I want to make sure we get that. So we did S.L.A.Y. What is the why?
Yeah, why is you, which is your mindset, you being on the offensive. So you can't just be defensive. You also have to have an offensive strategy where you're actually coming to a place where you're going, okay, what's my strategy? How am I focusing on me instead of focusing on what are they doing all the time and how are they handling things? Because honestly, you can't worry about that. They're not going to change. They're going to be who they are. You got to worry about you. And I'm telling you, I've had thousands and thousands of people go through my S.L.A.Y program in more than 150 countries all over the world. I have an app, which, so I can see how many people have done my program throughout the world. And so I know that, and we have hundreds of testimonials. So it absolutely works. And so just stay the course, focus on you, and it does work. I always say it's like Glinda the Good Witch at the beginning of Wizard of Oz, when the Wicked Witch came around her and she was like, go away, you have no power here. That's where we want to go. Because what happens with narcissists is they look for people who have openings, who have vulnerability. And once you have that full authentic power, you no longer have that opening. They go find somebody else. Once you've conquered this and you've conquered narcissists, you're so strong, you're so powerful. There's no place for them to go anymore.
And we were talking about this earlier. When you hit that point, you can't ever go backwards. You can't unsee it. It's like the switch is on. There's no going back. Once you see it, once you now are in this place of empowerment where their stuff doesn't affect you anymore, it's like I said, it's game over.
Game over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
absolutely. And so many people are like, oh, I'm not going to trust myself after this. And, how do I know? You'll know.
You'll know.
You'll know. Because now that you've seen it, now that you've been in this, it's going to be like so obvious to you.
Can you tell people where they can find all of your programs and your books and all of your resources, just everything that you have to offer? Because for those listening, Rebecca has a wealth of information, and even down to your reels on Instagram, very just like black and white, just quick tips and strategies, and just really brilliant. And so I really recommend that all of you go browse the stuff that she has out there, because it is a tremendous resource.
Thank you so much. So my YouTube is probably my top place is RebeccaZung.tv, and my Instagram is at Rebecca Zung. I have a free Crush My Negotiation prep playbook for everybody at winmynegotiation.com. You can definitely get that. It's like 15 pages, and it's a really great place for people to start. My book is Slay the Bully, How to Negotiate with a Narcissist and Win. And I mean, my program is at Slay Your Negotiation. And I mean, those are all the best things, best places to start. But I thank you. I appreciate you. I think you are amazing. And I love all of your stuff too.
Thank you. Well, the feeling is mutual. And I think I know people are going to get so much out of this, because, one of the things that it just triggered it when you said it, that I feel people come across a lot during the divorce process is, the lawyers or the judge telling them, you two need to get along, right? Like, you two are adults, you have to get along. Right. So
it's not happening.
Yeah. And so, a high conflict divorce isn't because both people. A high conflict divorce can be a high conflict divorce because of one person. And I think that this kind of stuff really does an excellent job of making that painfully obvious in a way that it's almost working behind the scenes, that the narcissist doesn't realize it's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, that just plays right into a narcissist's hands.
Exactly.
That just gives them supply.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Totally.
Well, Rebecca, this is amazing. Thank you so much for doing this. I definitely want to have you back on, because I feel like there's so much we could talk about. And I could talk to you for hours, as I always say. So thank you for coming on, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Everyone take care. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Next Up Narcissism. I hope you found it useful, but most importantly, I hope you found it validating. Want to work one-on-one with me? Visit my website at drjamiezuckerman.com to book a personalized coaching session, and be sure to check out my on-demand workshops on topics like co-parenting with a narcissist, life after leaving, anxiety management strategies, and more. Again, that's drjamiezuckerman.com. You'll also find links to my interactive workbooks, merchandise, resources, and newsletter sign-up. Next Up Narcissism is as much your podcast as it is mine. I want to hear your feedback and what you want to hear. So make sure to leave a podcast review wherever you listen, or send an email to nextup@drjamiezuckerman.com. Again, that's nextup@drjamiezuckerman.com. Be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And as always, thank you so much for listening. Make sure to tune in next week to see what's up next on Next Up Narcissism.